I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. That's the thing I keep telling myself, even now. I was just standing in the hallway outside the conference room, pretending to scroll through my phone, waiting for Christopher to finish his call, so we could grab lunch like we always did on Fridays. Totally normal. Totally harmless. Then I heard my name. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to make my thumb stop moving. Matthew doesn't know, Christopher said, his voice low, careful. The kind of careful you use when you're afraid of being overheard. There was a pause, then a laugh that didn't sound amused. No, of course I care about him. That's the problem. My chest tightened in a way that didn't make sense yet. I should have walked away. I know that now. But my feet stayed planted, like my body had decided this conversation was happening whether I wanted it or not. For context, Christopher and I had been friends for almost 2 years. We worked at the same design firm, sat 2 desks apart, shared inside jokes about our boss's passive-aggressive emails, and had slowly fallen into a routine that felt comfortable. Easy. He was the person I texted when my coffee order was wrong. I was the one he called when his car wouldn't start. We had history in that quiet, everyday way that sneaks up on you. I was also very, very aware that I had feelings for him. Had for a long time. And I was equally aware that he'd never given me a clear reason to think those feelings went both ways. So hearing my name in that tone, it hit different. Yeah, he continued, quieter now. If he finds out like this, it'll mess everything up. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure it would give me away. Finds out what? There was muffled movement on the other end of the call, someone else talking. I leaned just a fraction closer to the door, hating myself for it and doing it anyway. I don't know how to tell him, Christopher said. He trusts me. I don't want to be another person who disappoints him. That one landed like a punch. Because disappointment has always been my thing. People leave, plans change, feelings don't match. I've learned to brace for it. But Christopher? He was the one person I hadn't braced for. The one I let myself relax around. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. The door creaked slightly as someone shifted inside, and instinct finally kicked in. I stepped back, heart racing, just as Christopher said, "I'll talk to you later." "Yeah, thanks." The call ended. I didn't wait for him to come out. I turned and walked straight to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and just stood there, staring at the metal door like it might explain what the hell I just heard. My brain immediately started filling in the blanks in the worst ways possible. Did he know I liked him? Was he about to tell me he was seeing someone? Had I done something wrong without realizing it? I replayed his words over and over. Care about him. That's the problem. That wasn't nothing. But it also wasn't clarity. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Christopher. You disappear?" "Christopher. I'm done. Still up for lunch?" I stared at the screen, my hands slightly shaky. This was the moment. I could pretend everything was normal. I could act like I hadn't just overheard a conversation that felt like it cracked something open inside me. Or I could say something. Risk it. Change the shape of whatever we were. I typed, deleted, typed again. "Yeah. Give me a minute." I splashed cold water on my face, took a deep breath, and tried to put my mask back on. The easy smile, the casual Matthew he was used to. But as I looked at my reflection, I realized something had already shifted. I couldn't unhear what I'd heard, and whatever Christopher was hiding from me, it was already changing everything. Lunch felt wrong from the second I sat down across from him. Christopher was acting normal. Too normal. Same half smile, same easy posture, same way he leaned forward with his elbows on the table like he always did when he was relaxed. If I hadn't overheard that conversation, I would have believed everything was fine. That was the problem. Now I knew it wasn't. "So," he said, unwrapping his sandwich, "you good?" "You kind of vanished back there." I shrugged, aiming for casual and probably missing by a mile. "Yeah, just needed air." He studied me for a second longer than usual. Not suspicious exactly. Curious. Like he could tell something was off but didn't know where to poke yet. "Long week," he said finally. "Yeah," I replied. "Feels like that lately." We ate in that weird half-silence where conversation keeps almost starting and then dying. Normally, we'd be laughing about something stupid by now. A client typo, a ridiculous Slack message, anything. But my brain was too loud. Every time he looked at me, I wondered if this was the moment he'd say it. "Hey, Matthew, there's something I need to tell you." "Hey, Matthew, I didn't mean for you to find out like this." The thought made my stomach twist. "So," Christopher said, clearing his throat, "you doing anything tonight?" There it was. My heart jumped for no good reason. "Not really," I said. "Why?" He hesitated, just a beat too long to ignore. "I was thinking maybe we could hang out, like actually hang out, not just grab food and complain about work." That made me look up. "We already do that," I said carefully. "Yeah, but," he exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know. This feels different. At least it does to me." My pulse spiked. "Different how?" I almost asked. Almost. But fear has a way of gluing your mouth shut. "Sure," I said instead. "What did you have in mind?" "Come over," he said. "I'll cook, or attempt to. Worst case scenario, we order pizza." I should have said no. I should have given myself space to think, to process what I'd heard. But the truth was, I didn't want distance from him. I wanted answers. "Okay," I said. "Yeah, that sounds good." The look of relief on his face was instant, like he'd been bracing for rejection. That alone told me this wasn't just a friendly dinner. Christopher's apartment was exactly how I remembered it. Clean but lived-in, neutral furniture, plants he somehow managed to keep alive, and a faint smell of whatever expensive soap he used. He kicked his shoes off and tossed his keys on the counter. "Make yourself comfortable," he said. "Wine, please." He handed me a glass and leaned against the counter, watching me in that quiet way that made me feel seen and exposed at the same time. "You're really quiet tonight," he said. I let out a small laugh. "Funny. I was thinking the same about you. Guess we're both holding something back," he said lightly. My chest tightened. This was it. I could feel it. The moment hovering between us, heavy and fragile. "Christopher," I started, then stopped. He straightened immediately. "Yeah." I looked at him, really looked at him. The familiar curve of his mouth, the crease between his eyebrows when he was nervous, the way his eyes softened when he focused on me. I thought about the words I'd overheard. Care about him. That's the problem. "I overheard something today," I said quietly. The color drained from his face. "What?" he asked, though his voice already knew. "I was outside the conference room," I continued. "I didn't mean to listen, but I heard you say my name." Silence crashed down between us. Christopher stared at me like I just knocked the air out of his lungs. His jaw clenched, then unclenched. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Enough," I said. "Enough to know there's something you didn't want me to find out." He turned away, running both hands through his hair. Damn, that single word carried a lot of weight. "I was going to tell you," he said. "I swear. Just not like this." "Tell me what?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He turned back to face me, eyes searching my face like he was deciding whether to jump or pull back. "That I've been lying to myself," he said quietly. My heart pounded. "And about?" I pressed. "About why I care so much about you," he said. "About why the idea of losing you scares the hell out of me." The room felt smaller, hotter. "Christopher, I don't know when it happened," he cut in, "or how, but somewhere along the way you stopped being just my friend." My breath caught. "And I didn't say anything," he continued, voice rough, "because I was afraid if I did, I'd ruin everything." I swallowed hard. "You wouldn't be the only one," I said softly. His eyes snapped to mine. "What do you mean?" I took a breath. "I mean, I've been there for a while." The silence that followed was different this time. Charged. Electric. "Matthew," he said, barely above a whisper. And in that moment I knew for sure. Overhearing that conversation hadn't just changed things. It had finally pushed us to stop pretending. The air between us felt tight, like the room was holding its breath. Christopher didn't move right away. He just stood there, staring at me like he was trying to make sure I was real, that he hadn't imagined what I just said. "You've been there?" he asked slowly. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "Yeah. Longer than I probably should have let it go." A soft, almost disbelieving laugh escaped him. He leaned back against the counter, pressing his palms into the edge like he needed the support. "Jesus," he muttered. All this time. All this time," I echoed. For a second, neither of us spoke. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the faint noise of traffic outside, my own heartbeat in my ears. "I kept telling myself I was reading into things," he said. "That you were just being you, friendly, thoughtful. That I was the idiot for wanting more." My chest tightened. "Funny." I told myself the exact same thing. He looked up at me then, really looked, and something in his expression shifted. Not fear, not confusion, relief. "So that conversation you overheard," he said quietly. "I was talking to my brother." "That makes sense," I replied. "He's the only one who knows I've been spiraling about this," Christopher continued. "About you. He kept telling me if I didn't say something, I'd regret it." "And would you have?" I asked. His answer was immediate. "Yeah." That honesty hit harder than any dramatic confession could have. He pushed off the counter and took a step closer. "I meant what I said," he added. "About not wanting to disappoint you. You matter too much to me for that." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You should know by now I don't break that easily." "I know," he said. "That's part of the problem." We smiled at each other, small and tentative, like we were learning a new version of something familiar. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Anything." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" he asked. I considered the question for a moment. "Because I was happy and scared, and because what we had already felt safe." He nodded. "Yeah, that tracks." Another pause, this one heavier, expectant. "So what happens now?" he asked. The question hung between us, fragile and dangerous. I took a breath. "That depends. Are you asking as my friend? Or as something else?" "I'm asking as someone who wants to stop pretending," he said. My pulse spiked. "Then," I said quietly, "I think we see what this feels like when we're honest." He smiled, slow and nervous and genuine. "Yeah, I'd like that." Christopher lifted his hand slightly, hesitated, then let it fall back to his side. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Us being this close?" He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. His hand found mine, tentative at first, then firmer when I didn't pull away. The warmth of his palm sent a quiet shiver up my arm. We stood there like that, fingers intertwined, both smiling like idiots. And for the first time since I'd overheard that conversation, the knot in my chest loosened. Because whatever came next, awkwardness, complications, risk, it was real. And it was already changing everything. "I keep thinking about how close we've been to this," he admitted, staring at his wine glass. "All those late nights, the jokes, the looks we pretended not to notice." "I noticed," I said. He smiled. "Yeah, I figured." The silence between us settled into something softer now, not tense but loaded with possibility. I felt lighter, like I'd finally put down something heavy I'd been carrying alone. "Can I tell you something kind of embarrassing?" Christopher asked. "Only if I get to return the favor later." "Deal." He took a breath. "I replay conversations with you, like afterward, wondering if you meant something more by the way you said something, or if I was just projecting." I laughed quietly. "You have no idea how validating that is." "Good," he said, "because I thought I was losing my mind." "Matthew," he said, more serious now, "I need to know something." "Okay. If we do this," he said, "I don't want it to be a secret. I don't want half steps or pretending at work or acting like nothing's changed when it clearly has." That made my chest tighten, but not in a bad way. "I don't either," I said. "I just want to be sure we're on the same page." "I want to date you," he said simply. "Not experiment." not see what happens while keeping one foot out the door. My heart skipped. I want that too, I said. I just didn't think it was an option. He shook his head. It was. I was just scared. You okay? He asked. More than okay. That was when he leaned in. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. Wow, he breathed. Yeah, I said. Wow. He rested his forehead against mine for a moment, eyes closed. So, guess that answers a few questions. It raises about 100 more, I replied. He laughed, low and real. Good. We'll figure them out. I leaned into him then, my head resting against his shoulder, his arm finally wrapping around me like it had been waiting for permission. Outside, the world kept moving. Work, routines, expectations. But inside that apartment, everything felt paused. All because of a conversation I was never meant to hear, and a truth neither of us could hide anymore. We stayed like that for a long time. No talking, no rushing, just existing in the quiet that followed the kiss, my head against Christopher's shoulder, his thumb absent-mindedly brushing slow circles against my arm. It felt natural in a way that almost scared me, like this was how it was always supposed to be, and we'd just taken the long way around. You know, he said eventually, voice soft. I kept replaying that conversation in my head all day, the one you overheard. I shifted slightly to look up at him. Yeah, I was so sure I'd messed everything up, he admitted. That if you ever found out, it'd be because I froze too long and lost my chance. I smiled faintly. Turns out you just underestimated my ability to overhear things. He laughed quietly, pressing his forehead to my temple. Guess so. The mood shifted after that. Not colder, just more thoughtful. Like we were both suddenly aware of the reality waiting outside this moment. Work on Monday. Shared spaces. Friends who would notice the change before we ever said a word. Can I ask you something kind of serious? I said. He nodded immediately. Always. What were you planning to do? I asked. If I hadn't heard that conversation, he didn't answer right away. His hand stilled on my arm. I was going to tell you, he said finally. Tonight, actually. That's why I asked you over. I just didn't know how to start. That makes two of us, I said. He turned slightly so we were facing each other again. I don't want this to be another almost, he said. I've had enough of those. I felt that deep in my chest. Me too. We talked after that. Really talked. About boundaries, about work, about how weird it might be at first. About the fact that neither of us had expected to fall for someone so close, so familiar. At some point, the wine glasses were empty and forgotten on the coffee table. So, Christopher said, trying to sound casual and failing just a little, do you want to stay? Yeah, I said. I do. Later, lying there in the dark, listening to his breathing even out beside me, I thought back to that moment in the hallway. The accident of it. The split second where my life quietly veered in a different direction. I hadn't been meant to hear that conversation, but maybe I was meant to hear him, because sometimes the things that change everything aren't planned at all. They just find you anyway. Morning, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. I smiled before I even opened my eyes. Morning. He lifted his head, propping himself up on one elbow to look at me. There was a brief flicker of uncertainty in his expression, like he was checking to make sure last night hadn't vanished with the dark. You still good? He asked. Yeah, I said immediately. Really good. Same, he said. I kept thinking I'd wake up and feel weird about it. And, I asked. And I don't, he said. I feel calm, which is new for me. I laughed softly. Welcome to emotional growth. It's terrifying. At least now I know I wasn't imagining it, he said. Those looks, the tension. Oh, you absolutely weren't, I replied. I just thought I was alone in it. He traced lazy shapes on my arm, thoughtful. You know what really gets me? What? That the thing that finally forced us to be honest was you overhearing me at my worst, he said. Confused, scared, admitting things I wasn't ready to say out loud. I shrugged. Maybe that's why it worked. You weren't performing. You were just real. He looked at me for a long moment after that, something soft and intense in his eyes. Matthew, he said quietly, I don't want to go back to pretending. Neither do I. Work on Monday was interesting. We didn't make a big show of it. At one point, I caught him watching me from across the room, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. What? I mouthed. He shook his head slightly, still smiling, like he couldn't believe this was real. Later, as we packed up for the day, he leaned in close and murmured, Dinner at my place again? Thought you'd never ask. As we walked out side by side, I thought about how close I'd come to missing all of this. How easy it would have been to walk away from that door, to protect myself from hearing something painful. Instead, I'd heard the truth, and it had led me here to something honest, fragile, and entirely new. I didn't overhear a conversation that changed everything. I overheard a feeling that had been waiting to be spoken. The thing no one tells you about crossing a line you've avoided for years is how quickly it becomes normal. Not boring. Not dull. Just right. Christopher and I slipped into something that felt steady almost immediately. Mornings that started with shared coffee. Evenings that ended with us on the couch. Legs tangled, half watching something neither of us cared about. It wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was grounded, real, and that somehow made it more intense. A few weeks in, we were at his place again. Dishes drying on the rack, windows cracked open to let in the evening air. I was leaning against the counter while he dried his hands with a towel. You ever think about how close we were to not doing this? He asked casually. All the time, I said. It's kind of terrifying. He smiled, then grew thoughtful. I almost canceled that call the day you overheard me. That made me look up. Seriously? Yeah, he said. I was pacing the hallway, phone in my hand, thinking, don't do it, just keep it together. And instead, I asked, and instead I said everything out loud, he said, to someone else, loud enough for the universe to intervene. I laughed softly. Guess the universe has bad boundaries. I'm glad it does. There was a pause, then he added quieter, I think I needed you to hear it, even if I didn't know that at the time. That stayed with me. We told people slowly, his brother first, then my closest friend. Each conversation felt like another brick locking this into place. No turning back. No hiding. Work followed eventually. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet shift from those two are close to O. A few raised eyebrows. A couple of knowing smiles. No disasters. One afternoon, as we were leaving together, our boss called out, You two heading out? Christopher didn't hesitate. Yeah, together. The word sent a small, stupid thrill through me. Outside, as we walked to the car, I bumped his shoulder. You know that was the first time you've said that out loud at work. He grinned. Felt right. We stood there for a second, the city buzzing around us, and I realized something important. If I hadn't overheard that conversation, if I'd walked away, if I'd chosen ignorance over discomfort, I might have kept loving him quietly from a safe distance. He might have kept doing the same. We would have survived. But we wouldn't have lived this. Christopher reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. Hey, yeah. Thanks for not pretending you didn't hear it, he said. Thanks for choosing the hard thing. I squeezed back. Thanks for saying it in the first place. Some conversations aren't meant for you, but some truths are meant to find you anyway. And once they do, there's no going back, only forward, together. It hit me one night, weeks later, when nothing special was happening. We were brushing our teeth side by side. The mirror fogged, Christopher half asleep and squinting at his reflection like it personally offended him. I was leaning against the counter, watching him in that quiet way you only watch someone when you love them and don't need anything from them at all. This, the ordinary, was what everything had been changing toward. He caught me staring and smirked around his toothbrush. What? Nothing, I said. Just thinking. That's never a good sign. I laughed. I was just realizing how weird it is that my whole life pivoted because I didn't walk away from a hallway fast enough. He rinsed his mouth, turned toward me fully. You mean the best accident of my life? I raised an eyebrow. Bold claim. Matthew, I was living in this constant almost honest, almost brave, almost happy. You hearing that conversation forced me to stop hiding behind later. I swallowed, emotion tightening my chest in that familiar, steady way. I didn't mean to change anything, I said. I know, he replied. That's why it worked. We stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, the house quiet around us. No urgency, no doubt. Later, I thought about the version of myself from a few months ago, the one who would have smiled politely, buried his feelings, and told himself this is enough. I felt strangely grateful for that hallway, for the discomfort, for the fear, for the split second where everything could have gone wrong. Because sometimes the most important moments in your life aren't the ones you choose. They're the ones you overhear. And if you're brave enough not to look away, they don't just change everything. They give it to you.